Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Akhanda Mandalakaram Vyaptam Yena Characharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. This is an invocation from my point of view to both Sri Ramakrishna and Swamiji. May they bless our studies. So tonight I'm going to sort of give a bit of an introduction and then go into the first topic, which is on oneness, and we'll see how far we get. How much time do we go? What time do we go to?
We have 1 hour.
We have 1 hour. Okay. All right. Very good. So, just to remind everyone, in 1896 in London, Swami Vivekananda delivered a series of 4 lectures on practical Vedanta, which appear in his complete works in volume 2. These can be viewed as the foundation for much of his later work in the West. There were a number of different topics that he covered within that. I'm mainly going to be concentrating on 2 of them, but I wanted to at least go over, more or less list some of the other topics that are in there, because it's very packed. And so a lot of what we do in these kinds of retreats is try and unpack it. And sometimes what that means is we will supplement it with quotes from some of his other works that bear exactly on the same topic. So some of the things I'm going to be doing are not directly from the complete works, but are from other sources on the same topic. So at the very beginning of practical Vedanta, Swamiji poses 2 questions, or a question. How can we carry the Vedantic philosophy into practice? So then there are 2 themes that in that one question. First of all, what is the Vedanta philosophy? And secondly, how can it be made practical? So this is a outline, more or less, of the various things that he says in that, and then we'll get down to the specifics in detail. So, what is the Vedanta philosophy? According to Swamiji, I'm just going to be quoting him from here on, mostly. Vedanta teaches oneness of religion. It must cover the whole field of life. The whole field of life. It isn't something, now this is not Swamiji, I'm making a comment on the side. It isn't something that people just ruminate over in universities or sit in mountain caves and contemplate, or talk about to make points on university exams, oral exams, or anything like that. It covers the whole field of life. Second thing he mentions is love is God himself. The whole universe is explained by the one force of love. That love, this not I, this renunciation, is the only positive power in the universe. The motive power of the whole universe, unselfishness, renunciation, love, the real, is the only living force in existence. He packs a lot into each sentence. The impersonal God is a living principle. God is everywhere, saying, I am. The whole universe is a temple. Next idea. The ideal is that you are divine. The truth is in yourself. The theme of Vedanta is to see the Lord in everything. The impersonal includes and explains the personal. It is our highest generalization, and we are that. One and the same thing appears to be changing and is really unchanging. What is the soul? The idea of jiva unchanging within the changing. The ideal cannot be finite. So that's about the Vedanta philosophy. How can it be made practical? We must always elevate the life to the ideal. Always practical in the sense of the ideal is not necessarily materially practical. In other words, it wouldn't be an ideal if it were material. So the test of true practicality is, does it lead to oneness? Worship of the living God is the most practical of all worship. Every man will be a worshiper, and the reality in every man will be the object of worship. No man as he truly is. Knowledge alone that will save us in every department of life. In knowledge is worship. It is practical because it is its own nature. Help does not come from without, it comes from within ourselves. And then the last few items that I pulled out that he lists, he doesn't actually list, but he touches upon. Faith in oneself. It is the man who does not believe in himself that is the atheist. Then he exhorts us to strengthen the will, the character. If you declare you are free, you are this very moment. If you say you are bound, bound you will remain. Be unselfish. The more men and women think of themselves, the less they are able to do for others. The more selfish a man, the more immoral he is. He who has nothing to desire for himself, whom does he fear? The principles of Vedanta will be fulfilled by its capacity to help man wherever he is, accord a place to everyone. And then the scientific process applied to religion. There's quite a bit that we might go over in relation to that, but in brief, from the particular we deduce the general, and everything should be explained from its own nature, not from an outside agent. So that's kind of the scope of the 4 lectures in a quick rundown. I know it's a bit much, but like I said, we're going to talk about 1 or 2 main topics. One tonight. I think. Okay, I had this this handout to do. Does everybody have that yet?
Yeah.
Okay, good. The 3 most important things on this handout are in bold. And so I want to go just through those ones. And these are something you can take home and look over. But the first one is the fictitious differentiation between religion and the life of the world must vanish, for the Vedanta teaches oneness, one life throughout. And then the second, Vedanta, though it is intensely practical, is always so in the sense of the ideal. What is the ideal? This ideal is that you are divine. Thou art that. And what purpose does it serve? This is the real practical side of Vedanta. It does not destroy the world, but it explains it. It does not destroy the person, but explains him. It does not destroy the individuality, but explains it by showing the real individuality. It does not show that this world is vain and does not exist, but it says, understand what this world is, so that it may not hurt you. So these 3 main ones that I pulled out of here are the axioms that we must at least provisionally accept in order to follow his and Vedanta's reasonings and the implications for our life. So that has to be clear before we can really grasp the rest of it. Now, Swamiji, the way he, and it was amazing to me to see how he approached his topics when he would talk. Okay, usually he had a method, which isn't immediately apparent, but the method had 4 steps as far as I can tell. First thing is that he would state our usual understanding of a term or whatever topic it was that he was talking about. And then he would tear that down. Say, no, that's not it. I mean, that's how we usually understand it, but that's not it. And then he would redefine it in a new way. And then finally, he would build up a new understanding of that or change our perspective on it so that although we're using the same word now, we're using it differently. Okay, we're using it maybe in a deeper fashion or in a more sophisticated fashion or in a more all-encompassing fashion or in some way that is no longer limited by our previous programming. So he does that quite a bit, and in the first 2 lectures in this 4-lecture series, he begins his development of the idea of a reasonable religion, which to me, when I was new to all of this, I don't remember specifically, but I do remember saying to myself, that makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, that religion isn't something. He talked about mystery mongering. He didn't want mystery mongering. It's not a mysterious thing. It's a way of approaching life in such a way that you become an integral being, integral not only with yourself but with the world and with the supreme divine reality, and without differentiation. That those things that we normally think of as separate become unified. So, in the case of the word practical, it's not our usual meaning here. It is the method of approach to the non-material, the infinite, the unchanging, the undivided, the absolute. So that's kind of the preliminary remarks. Okay. On Sunday, we have 2 sessions, and on those days we will have discussion groups. We'll divide up into discussion groups, and we'll have some questions, and then the discussion groups can come together and share what they have. But tonight, since this is a kind of the beginning, we will have an opportunity for back and forth discussion this way, kind of, instead of in little groups. So just to let you know kind of where we're going. Now, Swamiji actually has a lot to say about oneness, and so I'm not going to announce where each of these quotes came from, but they're sprinkled throughout his other works. The Open Secret, The Goal, I think he has things in here, maybe this one's from Raja Yoga, I don't know, Reason and Religion, he's got a talk on Reason and Religion, and things like that. So there is only one life and one world, and this one life and one world is appearing to us as manifold. This manifoldness is like a dream. The dreams come, one after another, scene after scene unfolds before you. This is our experience, this is our everyday experience. This is where we start in Vedanta, where we are, from where we are. Then there are 3 approaches that can be taken, and are taken and must be taken if one is to follow the path of higher understanding or greater knowledge, which is actually, the word knowledge is very limiting in the English, when we use it in English, because jnana, to me, when you use the word jnana, it implies a way of sort of wedging our way into a greater consciousness, into a higher consciousness. That kind of knowledge which is not specific, but is nevertheless intensely awakening and alive within the individual. So the three approaches that are generally used is the affirmative approach. That means giving assent, responding with a yes, or confirming things, stating what is real, outright stating what is real. And then the negative form, which we're all familiar with, in the sense of what is spoken of in the traditional Vedanta practice as neti neti. It is a process of rendering ineffective or invalid, nullifying. So you have to nullify your misconceptions and then affirm the new idea. Okay, so you actually go back and forth between these two in Vedanta. You cannot stick exclusively to one or the other, because as we'll see a little bit later, they each have problems if you do one only of those two. So therefore, to make a comprehensive, shall we say, plunge into our investigation into the Supreme Divine Reality, what is that? We use both negative and affirmative approaches. Now, I'm going to first talk about the negative, because we all know that. Negation. Okay, negation promises to get us to the one by eliminating every notion to the contrary. So everything that is not one. So it's a matter of pulling off or discarding our ideas that make us see separateness. Now, it's interesting. This is coming from the point of view of the principle. Okay, the principle. I'm not giving specific examples because it's going to be slightly different in every person's life. How you go about approaching, no, what I'm seeing isn't so. I'm not, okay, you see a person begging on the street. You think, oh, he's dirty, he's homeless, he's, whatever. That's the normal approach. But the negations approach is, that doesn't make him different than me. We're not different, essentially. Okay? Still has the same human needs, still has the same divine essence, still has the same light of consciousness shining through that life. Okay? So this is this is how we try and counteract what we've been programmed to understand or to see. So, negation, if we use it exclusively, however, is very laborious. It can get, boring. It takes focus, it takes energy. We have to continuously and consciously examine our assumptions and presuppositions about how we and the universe work. And it has it requires us to confront Maya directly. Now, Maya I'm using in the sense right now in the sense of misperception or mistake or errors. Okay, the remedy is automatic in the sense of once we have negated properly, then we can say, now I see, now I get it. Okay, although we may need to continue the process for some time, because let's face it, we have spent how many decades getting the understandings that we already have, which are off the mark. They're not, Vedantically speaking, they're not on the mark. And so it takes us a long time to kind of reprogram ourselves. So that's about negation. Now, about affirmation. The good thing about affirmation is it clearly delineates what we mean, what is meant. So there's no possibility of misunderstanding. Statements can be memorized even and brought to mind whenever necessary. It uplifts us and inspires us and keeps us going, whether that be, I mean, there are some of these songs that we sang tonight, you can pick one little sentence or phrase from it and just contemplate that for some time, because it is so uplifting. Come to the heart's dark cave and illumine, that kind of thing. It's just like, as you're going through the day, you can be requesting that kind of illumination to help you affirm and to see the truth of the Vedantic dictums. So that kind of thing. We each can develop our own little way of doing that. Some people get a mnemonic, let's just say you have something in your office or laboratory or whatever it is that you're working. It's just some ordinary item. You have a clock there or something. And how many times a day you glance at the clock? But you can make a mnemonic. You can say to yourself, whenever I glance at the clock, I'm going to do one mantra at least. I'm going to do my mantra at least one time. So that way you can incorporate it throughout your day. But you have one little thing that triggers the memory that you've decided, and that's going to be my trigger, so that you don't have to, at the end of the day, say, not even once today did I remember my mantra. That kind of thing. Very simple. It seems, kind of paltry. It's not going to get me anywhere. But actually, over time, it's like putting money in the bank. It accumulates interest. And then interest on interest, compound interest, okay? That's the way the mantra works. Affirmation. The mantra is like an affirmation. It affirms your connection with the divine every time that you repeat it. Even if you don't kind of feel anything, or maybe even you're in not such a good mood, or, whatever. That's all the mind. That's all the mind. That doesn't matter. The mantra is connecting you at a deeper level. It's not mind level. So, there is a downside to affirmation, though, if people pursue it exclusively, and that is, over time, it can become like a truism or a platitude or something repeated without thought or conviction. Like, we do that with mantras. We do that with our mantras. It just becomes routine, and then you forget that it actually is a powerful instrument for helping us on the spiritual path. So, and then the affirmation, sometimes we can begin to doubt it. We can say, it's so ideal that maybe it becomes ineffective in how we live our lives. We begin to be skeptical about it. So this distortion is what Swamiji is attempting to remedy by saying you do both. Sometimes you do negation, sometimes you do affirmation. They work together. And just because people are householders doesn't mean you can't do negation. I mean, you can, because it's designed to tear down the notions of separation. That's basically what it's about. There's no real separation. Those are mental constructs. Separations are mental constructs that we've been taught since we were prelingual. Okay, so anyway, so the downside of one affirmation corrects the downside of negation and vice versa. And Swamiji says, summing up, everything that makes for oneness is truth. Therefore, in all of our actions, we have to judge whether it is making for diversity or for oneness. If for diversity, we have to give it up. But if it makes for oneness, we are sure it is good. So with our thoughts, we have to decide whether they make for disintegration, multiplicity, or for oneness, binding soul to soul, and bringing one influence to bear. If they do this, we will take them up, and if not, we will throw them off. This is to be heard of, to be thought upon, and then to be meditated upon. When the hands work, the mind should repeat. Now, he's coming from the point of view of a jnani, of course. I am it. I am it. Think of it. Dream of it until it becomes the bone of your bone and flesh of your flesh. Until all the hideous dreams of littleness, of weakness, of misery, of evil have entirely vanished. And no more then can the truth be hidden from you, even for a moment. So he dangles this carrot out in front of us and says, you can do it. You can do it. Until I am pure, it is no use going to caves or forests or to Varanasi or to heaven. And if I have polished my mirror, because he was talking previous to this about having a mirror that's dirty, it does not matter where I live. I get the reality just as it is. So it is useless running hither and thither and spending energy in vain, which should be spent only in polishing the mirror. So nothing can prevent. There was a great story. Actually, it was a Zen story, but same difference, of a young woman who was bedridden. I can't recall right now what her malady was. She had some disease or something. And her Zen master had given her practices, to do. So there she is, in a hospital or maybe at home, but can't leave her bed. She became fully illumined just by following. See, doesn't matter where you are, just by following, because it's retraining and or eliminating the mind. Yeah? And once the mind is, which is the problem, is basically rendered dysfunctional, or I should say non-functional, not dysfunctional, that's the wrong word, non-functional, then there's no barrier anymore, and the truth can shine through. So she was visited toward the end of her life, still in the bed there, by her master, and he confirmed, you got it, that's it, So it doesn't matter where we are. Lastly, this is to be meditated upon. Think upon it. Can you realize there will come a time when everything will crumble in the dust and you will stand alone? That moment of ecstatic joy will never leave you. You will actually find that you were without bodies. You never had bodies. I am one alone through all eternity. Whom shall I fear? This is all myself. This is all myself. This is continuously to be meditated upon. Through that comes realization. It is through realization that you become a blessing to others. Now, interestingly enough, another example comes to mind, which is also not a Vedantic example, but it doesn't really matter. There's a video of, this is from Japan, Buddhist monastery there, where it's out in the mountains. Japan is very mountainous, and they have some regions that are quite remote. And there's a Buddhist monastery there, and one of the practices that they occasionally do, one monk at a time, not as a group, is they take a 3-year vow. And that vow is that every day they will the monk will complete a certain circuit. I can't remember how many miles. He walks through this mountainous area, and spring, summer, winter, fall, whatever, without deviation. And on this tour that he makes, there are like little places where he stops along the way, like maybe a little small shrine or something like that. And he performs certain prayers or whatever they are. And this is very arduous because of the terrain, and because it takes hours every day, and then he comes back to the monastery at night, gets a few hours sleep, starts again the next day and goes around. Well, after 3 years, it's considered such a tapasya And the benefit is so fantastic that I'm talking here about. It is through realization that you become a blessing to others, that other people come and to be blessed by him, because he has acquired, I guess you would say, a certain radiance. You know, he's left the mind behind. He's left the mind behind and is now just the essence shining through. This also happens, of course, in our own tradition. We've had many realized souls in our order. Some of which I've had the fortune to meet. Many I only know by reputation, but there's nothing preventing us from attaining that except our own inertia. You know, we have to be up and doing. Now, I mentioned skepticism earlier, so I want to just go back to that for a moment. Swamiji says, the self is known to every one of us, man, woman, or child, and even to animals. Without knowing him, we can neither live nor move nor have our being. Without knowing this Lord of all, we cannot breathe or live a second. The God of the Vedanta is the most known of all, and is not the outcome of imagination. It's not the outcome of imagination, but others have said in our order, imagination is today's imagination is tomorrow's realization. So you have to have a certain amount of imagination to even go for it. You know, to even formulate what is it that I'm attempting to do here. He went to Harvard in 1896, and they had a question and answer period at Harvard. And so here's a couple of questions that they put to Swamiji. He said, the question was, this state of oneness that you speak of, is it an ideal or something actually attained? And Swamiji answered, we say it is within actuality. We say we realize that state. If it were only in talk, it would be nothing. Second question was, is it practicable to attain success here? And Swamiji answered, it is practicable, and the only thing that is practicable in this world. We say you are a born Vedantist, each one of you. You are declaring your oneness with everything, each moment you live. Every time that your heart goes out toward the world, you are a true Vedantist, only you do not know it. You are moral without knowing why, and the Vedanta is the philosophy which analyzed and taught man to be moral consciously. Yet even in this Maya, there is always the tendency to get back to the one, because it is the constitutional necessity of the soul, and this struggle to find this oneness is what we call ethics and morality. Now, this constitutional necessity of the soul, to me, is the entire basis of Vedanta. That one sentence, or phrase, I should say, because by definition, a human being, every human being, contains the entirety of spirituality, the entirety of Brahman. How is that possible? Well, I'm sorry if maybe my example won't resonate with everyone, but the example I like to use is the hologram. Just as in a hologram, how many people kind of know what I mean by a hologram? Okay. And a hologram, you all have one on your credit cards, that little chip, okay? There's a hologram. But you've probably seen some in other places. What it does is, well, Star Wars, okay? Star Wars has a 3D projected hologram kind of a thing. There's the Princess Leia saying, Obi-Wan, we need you, you are our only hope, whatever. Okay, a hologram is a photograph, a type of photograph made with laser technology. And what it does is it takes a three-dimensional space and everything within it, but makes a photograph of it and puts it onto a two-dimensional plate. Then when you want to see it, you shine the laser light through it again, and you see in front of you a three-dimensional space. But in reality, it's on a two-dimensional piece of film of some sort, okay? Now, so you understand what I'm saying about that. You've all seen that kind of thing, right? Now, the thing that a lot of people don't understand about a hologram is, the first ones anyway, the early ones, were all put on glass. They were put on a piece of glass. Now, you can take that hologram and you can shatter it. Let's say you have a concrete floor here. And you shatter it. And it breaks into a million little pieces. Let's say then you've got a little piece like this, right? Then you take the laser light and you shine it through that thing again, and you have the entire picture. You have the entire picture of that 3D space in that little piece. In every little piece. You pick up that piece, each piece, and you've got the whole picture. That's how it is with human beings and divinity. We all have the whole of it within us. All of it. That's why the great dictum, you are Brahman, that's where they're coming from. You think you're a little piece. You identify with being a little piece, but you're not. You have the entire thing within you. All of it. The entire universe. That's our hologram. The entire universe is there. So, and Swamiji knew that, and he didn't have the language of holograms back then. If he had, believe me, he'd be using that as an example. Because he would grasp whatever would help get his ideas across. And he was really big on science, and maybe we'll get to that tonight. I don't know. We'll get as far as we can. But so here he has this statement, this next statement. Even in this Maya, there is always the tendency to get back to the one, because it is the constitutional necessity of the soul, and this struggle to find this oneness is what we call ethics and morality. Well, it's called ethics and morality in the very beginning of the process. I mean, you have to have that as a basis before you really delve deeper into identity. What is my real identity? Who am I really? Now, he from the Real and Apparent Man, that lecture that he gave, he anticipates exactly how people misunderstand things. People are afraid that when they attain to religious realization, when they realize that there is but one, the fountains of love will be dried up and everything in life will go away, and that all they love will vanish for them, as it were, in this life and in the life to come. People never stop to think that those who bestowed the least thought on their own individualities have been the greatest workers in the world. Then alone a man loves, when he finds that the object of his love is not any low, little, mortal thing. Then alone a man loves when he finds that the object of his love is not a clod of earth, but is the veritable God himself. So this seeing God in everything, he talks about that a lot. And that's what he's meaning, okay? Remember, everybody looks like a little something, but it isn't, but we're not. We're not. When man has seen himself as one with the infinite being of the universe, when all separateness has ceased, when all men and women, all gods and angels, all animals and plants, and the whole universe have melted into that oneness, then all fear disappears. And all thought of where to go. You know, people ask so many questions about what happens after death and whatever. Well, where's to go? If you're one with everything, you're one with everything. Permanently. Period. Where to go? There is no other place. You are there already, always. So I'm going to step back a little bit and talk. Hold on a second. Maybe I'll save this for the next talk, because I want to go back into negation and affirmation a little bit, but there'll be other people here another time, so let's save that. All right. Now, this holographic example that I gave you is kind of a physical example of a paradox. How can the whole of it be there? Okay, now in a hologram you can explain it by every point in the original picture is mapped on every point on the film, which is very difficult to do, but they figured out how to do it. And if we go into each one of us is the whole of the hologram, then every point that is in each person is mapped onto every point which is in every other person. This is how we can, when Swamiji talks about feeling for others, well, he's encouraging people to feel for others, but look, let's face it, we do feel for others. If we see someone in great distress, or we see, a war veteran coming back and he's been mutilated somehow, or whatever, we feel that. We feel as if it's happened to us ourselves. And why is that? Because in a way it has. We know exactly what that person is experiencing. Friends of ours who get cancer, or friends, I hate to use always negative things. Okay, they use positive things. Let's say there's the happiest day of a person's life, maybe the day that they're married, maybe the day that they have a child, maybe the day that, they get into the university of their choice, or who knows. But we know what that feels like. We don't have to be told. Somehow or another, there is such an integral connection there that even our attempts to, or I shouldn't say our attempts, but society's attempts, let's say, society's attempts to make us feel like we're separate. Oh, there's the black community, there's the Mexican community, there's the Native Americans. These people are different than others. No, it doesn't work. It can't work. It can't work. Because we are all part of it. We're all part of the same thing. And we understand when people are, their country is being threatened, or their livelihood, or their resources are being taken, or whatever. It's very callous. People do it to make a living. They do some very callous things, but that doesn't mean that they're not connected. They're still connected somewhere. And karmically there will be some result. Hard to say exactly what that will be. But karmically there's also group results. When entire nations allow things to go wrong without doing anything about it, then they reap a group karma. This is the way it is. So, anyway. The biggest, I will repeat this probably the next day, but the biggest clue if you're going to use any negation, is to say, I am not any of that. I'm not any of that. If you want to list a million different things, I'm not any of that. But I am all of that. How could you know about it if you don't contain it somehow? How could you even be aware of it or perceive it? Unless somehow you contain, somewhere you contain, to a certain extent, you contain that. Otherwise there would be no connectedness. There would be no feeling of connectedness at all. Okay, so paradox. The whole universe is a play of differentiation and oneness. The whole universe is a play of the finite in the infinite. What is high and what is low in this marvelous interdependence of existence, where the smallest atom is necessary for the existence of the whole? Who is great and who is small? It is past finding out. And why? Because none is great and none is small. All things are interpenetrated by that infinite ocean. Their reality is that infinite, and whatever there is on the surface is but that infinite. The tree is infinite, so is everything that you see or feel, every grain of sand, every thought, every soul, everything that exists is infinite. Infinite is finite, and finite infinite. This is our existence. Om Purnamida Purnamida. Think about that sometime. Just take that Upanishadic peace chant and examine it word for word. I mean, if you want a paradox, there's nothing greater than that. Everything is infinite. Everything came out of the infinite. Everything goes back to the infinite. There's nothing but the infinite. I mean, it's just astounding. So, I think we've got about 12 minutes left or something like that, approximately.
Dinner is at 9.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we have more than that. Okay, all right, then I'll continue for a little bit, but I do want to have time for people. Actually, maybe we should stop now and then I can resume. If people have any questions or anything that you want to discuss further or anything. I mean, I don't know really how discussable this stuff is, because it just seems to me that when you soak it up, it's pretty self-evident. But then the mind gets involved, and the mind starts gyrating and saying, oh, I don't know how this can be so, and blah, 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 you know, and the mind is trying to hoodwink us, you know, make us see that, or not see, I should say, what is obvious. We were talking about this earlier when we were having lunch or breakfast or whatever, I can't remember. Anyway, so is there any particular aspect that we've talked about so far that anybody would like to discuss a little bit more or go into further, or I can continue, whatever. Yes, sir.
One example of hologram is, I just would like to add from some other Vedanta studies I picked up, is like, they say that we have been told we are a drop.
Yes, drop in the ocean.
Drop in the ocean, right? Mm. Then they say in every drop there is an ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, when you said about the hologram example.
Right.
This is I wanted to add, it wasn't a question, but now this is the question I have. When you say that all of us realize that we are infinite and we are Brahman, and even animals realize they are infinite, and how could it be safe? Would animals feel, or if they are,
That was an interesting comment that Swamiji made, and I was thinking about that too. Even the animals, see, we don't know what they know because they can't tell us. But they are what they are. That's the thing. There's no pretense. There isn't a single animal that knows how to pretend. They are what they are. And when you watch, or people have talked about, they watch like animals don't, unless they're being killed. If they're just dying a natural death, let's say, it's just a peaceful acceptance of the situation. They don't have an idea of non-existence. As a matter of fact, non-existence doesn't exist. I used to have I still have it. John Dobson, you people know who John Dobson was or anything? Okay. He was an astronomer, Vedantan, and if you want to, you can find, I'm sure, things on YouTube and stuff with him. He was a character, but he did both astronomy and telescope making and Vedanta, and he put it all together. He wrote a couple of books, and anyway, really great stuff. But anyway, he had this button made that you can wear, and it says, "Nothing doesn't exist." You cannot prove the existence of nothing. There is no such thing as non-existence. There's only existence. You think about these things. You have to think about these things. Because these are the keys to unlocking this infinity. These are the keys. There's nowhere else to go. Okay, a little bit more on the same paradoxical statements. We find that the idea of God in the Advaita is this oneness, and therefore we cannot objectify Him, for we are always living and moving in Him, whether we know it or not. Whatever we do is always through Him. Now the question is, what are time, space, and causation? Advaita means non-duality. There are not two, but one. Yet we see that here is a proposition that the Absolute is manifesting itself as many through the veil of time, space, and causation. Therefore, it seems that here are two, the Absolute and Maya, the sum total of space, time, and causation. It seems apparently very convincing that there are two. To this, the Advaitist replies, it cannot be called two. To have two, we must have two absolute, independent existences which cannot be caused. So Maya and Brahman, the Absolute, we talk about them as if they're separate. They are not separate. There is no way to separate them. Like Ramakrishna used to say, fire and its power to burn. How can you separate them? I mean, what is fire without burning? You can't do it. So this is an integral. And when we realize this in the very in our whole constituent being, kind of, then then to me this. I mean, I can't say definitively, but to me that's the idea of being a real jnani, okay, is to know or to experience this within your whole being, that there's no difference. Like we have these different koshas. I was going to go through that. They say that we have these different koshas, sheaths of existence, okay. But you look at each sheath, independently. Look at each one at a time. And get rid of the idea of duality. Okay, matter. We have this Annamaya kosha, food body, made of food. Okay, so we've got carbon, minerals, genes, limbs, we've got a form. All of this is the part of the food body. Okay, well, where did the food come from? Food came from parents provided food, the world provided food. Okay, isn't that pretty much all the same system? Can you have eaten food if there wasn't a world there to provide you with the food? So you are one with food. The food came from the earth. The earth and food are pretty synonymous, because we say this is the material body, and the earth is material. So where's the two-ness there? Where? How can it be? It's like when you see on a screen. Remember Pac-Man? You guys are old enough to remember Pac-Man. Do you remember Pac-Man? No, he's too young. It was the very first arcade game on a computer. Okay? And all it was this face, like a round face, and it would like eat up. You had to eat up so many little dots or something in a certain pattern or whatever. I mean, I don't even remember exactly. But here's this Pac-Man going and eating all these dots, and the dots are disappearing behind him because he's eating them, right? So that's basically what we do. We come here, we eat the food, and the food disappears into us, right? But the food is still there, right? Because it's here. It didn't go anywhere. It's still here. And it came from, the only way we can say outside of ourselves is because we have a skin. If we didn't have skin, and we were just that drop in the ocean that you mentioned, there would be no difference. Okay, so take each sheath. Okay, there's the energy sheath, the pranamaya kosha, okay? The life force. We talked about the emotions are part of that, or feelings and things like that. So we already talked about how you can feel what other people are going through, etc., like that. Now, how can you feel that unless you contain it to a large extent? Where are you getting that energy? That energy is in the universe. It is there. It is. There's not a second energy. There's only the energy of the prana. It's like, hello, we are living systems, but prana can be living or non-living. It pervades the entire universe. You can't have a universe without prana, because they say in Sankhya, prana, the world is nothing but prana and akasha, all of creation, or srishti is prana and akasha. That's it. That's single. They call it that. They thought of it as a duality, but even that's not a duality, because we have Einstein, who says E equals M. You can't. E equals M. They're totally convertible, one to the other, all the time. Energy and matter are being converted back and forth. So where's two? Where's two? No. Mind. Okay, so then we go to the Manomaya kosha. We think we are original in our thinking, but truthfully, how many of us are real original thinkers? The original thinkers are very few. And Swamiji mentions that also in some of his talks somewhere. You get geniuses like the Einstein, like the people who make the huge breakthroughs that nobody else ever went there. Those are the original thinkers, and there are very few. The rest of us are recycling the same stuff over and over again. So, where did we get our thoughts? We got them from the previous people who had the same thoughts. So then we go to the intellect. Intellect is the seat of values and decision making. And so the values, there's a hierarchy of values. There's human values, global values, eternal values. Okay. Some people, the really, what you could call tamasic types or really extremely perverted types, may have what we would consider to be very negative values. You mean like the gang members, you know, who to be initiated into a gang, they have to just randomly kill somebody. You know, that kind of thing. We find that very distressing, very disturbing. I'm not talking about those kinds of values, but even that person, if he or she should come under the proper influence, would realize that what they did was not right. And that they can, under the right circumstances, they can rehabilitate themselves. Nobody can rehabilitate them for them. They can provide an opportunity, they can provide the... But this intellect that we have is pre-programmed, just like the rest of our Constitution. So if we're raised in an environment where drugs and all that kind of stuff prevail, you know, then we will have that kind of an intellect. We will base our values, our judgments on those kinds of things. If we come from a very cultured, refined background, then that's the kind of intellect we will tend to have generally. So even that we got to a large extent from somewhere else. So that reinforces our connectedness with, okay, we're just like a cog in this whole thing going on, this whole life process. That's the other thing I like about Vedanta is it started, I had never heard that before, the life process. It's a phenomenon, it's the nomenon in phenomenon. You know, it's like eternal. Eternal life doesn't mean, you know, you die and your soul goes to heaven. A lot of people believe that. That means eternal life. It means life itself is eternal. And we participate in it. Or better yet, it allows us to participate in it. Okay. Life has given us the opportunity to participate in it. So, the intellect, a refined intellect, will understand that even those decisions that it makes, the basis on which it makes those decisions, it inherited from somewhere else. It didn't create those things. And then the Anandamaya Kosha. This is where it all integrates, integral unity. And it brings all of these other sheaths, which they say are like lower, I hate to use these words, but you know, it brings them all together. And when these things all integrate into one thing, then we get this oceanic feeling, I am. But it doesn't mean I am separate. It doesn't mean that I am separate from anything. I am all of it. So, don't think when you study or hear or read about the different koshas that they are separate from one another. They're just different ways of looking at different aspects. That they're ways of classifying our information about the different aspects of our unified being. And that unified being requires this interdependent connectedness with everything else, because that unified being did not come about by its own will. something popped it into existence, and then it goes back up. And the form, I'm talking about the forms. The form comes and the form goes. But that which came into form and that which goes out of form, that stays always. I think this clock is an hour off.
It's 8:45. That's good.
No, the 10
No,
minutes.
it says, oh, I see. It's this. I'm sorry. It's the alarm set thing, or whatever that is. Yeah, it's the alarm set. Okay, very good. Okay. Vedanta says that separation does not exist. It is not real. It is merely apparent. On the surface, in the heart of things, there is unity still. If you go below the surface, you will find that unity between man and man, between races and races, high and low, rich and poor, gods and men and animals. If you go deep enough, all will be seen as only variations of the one, and he who has attained to this conception of oneness has no more delusion. What can delude him? He knows the reality of everything, the secret of everything. Where is there any more misery for him? What does he desire? He has traced the reality of everything to the Lord, the center, the unity of everything, and that is eternal existence, eternal knowledge, eternal bliss. So again, any other comments or something you want to have discussed?
So whether mind, and as you said, mind, more or less everybody has the same thought process. So what I understood is everybody probably has the same same output of the mind, except a very few, like Albert Einstein. And then we have the intellect, which is a seed value, which is again something which is built based on something like culture or some commonality based on the bringing up of the person. So, and now we have realization, which we are going towards. So now the thing is it right to say that mind is a tool using which we can go towards realization, and intellect might come in the way, or could intellect be also aligned with the mind?
Intellect is a higher tool than mind.
Okay, could you kindly elaborate on that?
Yes, in the conception, in the Sankhya philosophy, which was bequeathed to Vedanta, the Antakarana, the inner instrumentality, has basically four, I don't want to call them parts because they're not parts, they're kind of more like functions. Manas, a mind. The mind is the thing that runs around. Okay, it moves constantly. Its function is to communicate between the so-called inner and the so-called outer. So the mind is taking in sense impressions and giving out commands for responding to those sense impressions. And it's always in motion. It's a very nature. Chitta is the fundamental function of the Antakarana, because that is more like subconscious mind. That's where everything resides, all the memories, all the tendencies. We have tendencies, we have samskaras, we have vasanas, we have all this resides unbeknownst to us in our conscious mind. It's there. That's in the chitta. Chitta is like the repository. Then we have intellect, which is the decision-making capability. But it's more than that. It has an intuitive grasp of things. It doesn't. It can reason. It can reason, but it can also just intuitively, in a flash, understand something, and you don't know how you got there, but you know you're correct. You know you understood it properly. Those are functions of the intellect. And the intellect is where the values reside, as I mentioned before. So you value. Some people value family life. They value maybe the type of work that they do. Maybe they're really into it. They love it. If they're a doctor or whatever, artist. So that's where the values reside. Ahankara. The fourth is the ahankara. The sense of I. The sense of I. Now, I can just give you the simplistic, and you can spend hours going into ahankara, but the simplistic thing is, that's what gives us our sense of separateness. And that's the very thing where the Vedantic teaching focuses and says, yes, but ahankara is giving you wrong information. You're not separate. You are all of it. You have to realize you are the all of it. You're not the little piece. You're what you see when you shine the light through it, and you get the whole hologram. So intellect has a place. Intellect is like a third level up. The ranking goes like this: chitta, manas, buddhi, ahankara. So buddhi is very important, and there's a lot written in the spiritual literature about, and in the Gita, about developing proper buddhi. The word D is involved in there. D is that intelligence, that grasps and flashes. So the jnani, I have to talk jnani because that's basically where I'm coming from here. Once that flash comes that yes, I'm all of it, then the thing is to make that understanding permanent and to continually replenish that understanding, continually replenish it until it basically has reprogrammed your whole being. But that doesn't mean, as he pointed out earlier, that you're going to change in some fundamental, that you're going to cease being a human being or something. No. It's like the ultimate, it's like the pinnacle of being a human being. That's what, pursued to its ultimate end, that's what Sri Ramakrishna called Vidyaprana, which means not only am I seeing what's real with my eyes closed when I meditate, but also when my eyes are open and I'm living life. I'm going through life. That's Vidyaprana. So, did I answer your question? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. What else? Anybody else has? We have about 5 minutes. Okay, I found this prayer in Swamiji's Jnana Yoga, interestingly enough. And I never hear anybody use this, so I'm going to use this. Oh, one that cannot be confined or described, one that can be perceived in our heart of hearts, one beyond all compare, beyond limit, unchangeable like the blue sky. Oh, learn the all, Holy One, seek for nothing else. Where changes of nature cannot reach, thought beyond all thought, unchangeable, immovable, whom all books declare, all sages worship, O Holy One, seek for nothing else. Beyond compare, infinite oneness, no comparison is possible. Water above, water below, water on the right, water on the left, no wave on that water, no ripple, all silence, all eternal bliss. Such will come to thy heart, seek for nothing else.